Does off-roading cancel or void your Ford Bronco warranty? And really the information covered here tonight is it's not just Ford Bronco. This is important for us all to know. If you've got a Ranger, you've got a Maverick, really anything you might off-road or race. So we've got warranty information. We're going to do the ins and outs, what's covered, what's not covered, because we want to make sure that you're well taken care of. Obviously, Dave and I, we care about our car community, and we want everyone to be, safe, sound, and have more dollars in their pocket. We've all got something to spend money on. In my case, it's of course, as you all know, dressing and feeding those poodles. But we've got Dave on the show tonight. Dave, you've got a very interesting story to tell us, and you're a long-term off-roader, and you've been a car guy since forever. So tell us your story.
Well, first off, I want to tell your audience, because first off, thank you for having me on here, John. allterrainnation.com. Go check us out, and get on YouTube and check us out. We do all things automotive. But the story here is a couple weeks ago, we were in Michigan. We were at a local Bronco club meet, and it's near Ford's stomping ground. So a lot of Ford employees have Broncos. They want to go try them out. And the park that we were at is called Holly Oaks ORV. It's where you see, like, I don't know, John, if you remember where they had their when they were launching the Bronco, they had that big Bronco sign that looked like the Hollywood sign. It was on a wall, on a hillside, and
Okay.
they brought all the journalists and stuff. That's where they got to kind of drive the Bronco. It's the same off-road park. So Ford knows.
Cool. Yes, I remember.
Yeah, so Ford knows this park really well. They've had a lot of Broncos there. So this meet we went to, they were expecting like 30 Broncos to show up, and they had 83 show up. And now this park is only a few hundred acres, so that's not a lot of ground for a lot of Broncos, but it's pretty neat little park. They have a lot of little obstacles, but very sandy, loose soil, which I was excited about to go there, because here in Middle Tennessee, we deal with a lot of rock and just clay. And so it was something different for me to off-road in. So we went there and having a blast. I seen this gentleman. There's video on my channel where we're going down these little sand embankments and climbing up, and Kelly almost got stuck once. And because it's new to us, this whole train was new to us. And we see this gentleman, he does the same thing, goes on, and then we see him drive across the other side of the park. And suddenly we see this gentleman walking back to us. And I thought, well, maybe he's just stuck or something, or he's just wanting to get a photo of his Bronco way out there. Who knows?
That's and
yeah. And well, he was like, hey guys, I think I'm high centered, which means to your audience, if they're not into off-roading, is his vehicle. So he was approaching a downhill climb, and what had happened was the middle of the frame, it bottomed out. Basically, the vehicle bottoms out, and you don't have any front wheel traction, and sometimes your rear wheels aren't doing well. So he was like, can you give us a tow, or give me a little tow out? And I was like, of course we can. And there was actually a Ford exec there too. He was in one of the new Raptors. And so we all went over there, and he was like, hey, I'm putting it in gear and nothing's happening. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll just pull you out. Maybe the ground was on the drive shaft, something. Anything could happen. So we proceeded to pull him out. And when we were pulling him down the hill, you could hear some pop, 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 pop to it. Not a good sign. And even in my video, you can hear me going, well, that sounds like the transfer case. Like it might have something gone wrong in the transfer case. And we thought, the Ford exec said, it's probably the computer freaking out. It just doesn't know what it's just trying to do right now. But if we get him on flat ground, it'll probably solve that issue. So we do that. Nothing. He could put it in drive. You could hear the engine rev. Nothing. Like it was not going in gear whatsoever. So after that, we were told by somebody at the park, hey, if we get a tow truck to come out here, they're going to triple the price. It's an off-road park. They don't want to come off pavement if they don't have to. And so the gentleman was like, yeah, what do I do? And I said, well, we can tow you out. We have tow straps. And we very gently took the vehicle out. And we got to the parking lot area of this. And I thought, well, why don't we unplug the battery? Maybe it's the computer freaking out. We'll just let it reboot itself. So we did that. Nothing happened. And me being from Tennessee in Michigan, I don't have any tools. I was very limited of my ability to help the gentleman, but he was very gracious that me and Kelly helped pull him out. He was very kind of it's like, this is what off-road people do. If you go off-roading, you don't, no man left behind. You go, you know, take your vehicle. So I talked to him
Yeah,
for
that's
an hour
right.
or so, and I said, hey, I would like to hear the rest of the story because I did a video on this showing us recovering this guy. He's like, of course. So a couple days go by, and he'd reached out to me and said, hey, I took it to where I bought it. And I know, John, you're real big on it. Take the vehicle to where you, if you have warranty work, right? Is that what you're supposed to do, is take it potentially to where you
Absolutely.
bought it? So he did that, and they
Yeah,
told him they didn't
absolutely.
have it.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead,
and
John.
I know I was just before you continue with the story, I do want to point out for warranty information, you can find that in your glove box. And if not, you can get it right offline. You can download it to your phone or whatever mobile, whatever device you use. And it's pretty clear right in the introduction. They say when you need warranty repairs, your selling dealer would like you to return it to them for that service. And by the end of the video, we're going to cover how this can be beneficial, but it can also it can play a negative, have a negative impact. So you need to know
Right.
when you buy, you should really ask when you're buying at a dealer, make sure they actually have all the skilled staff on hand to repair your vehicle. Because
Which,
simply put, I'll get into detail at the end of the video, but your dealer has a certain, what you could say as a normal budget for how many claims and how much money should go to various parts. So
right,
that can play potentially. There's a bit of danger behind all that. We'll cover that
right.
in a bit.
Which is strange because you don't think about that when you're purchasing a vehicle. Like, hey, I need to make sure the back of the house is capable of repairing it. But this gentleman, so he took it to his purchasing dealership, and they said, hey, we do not have a specialist for transmission issues. You're going to have to take it to another dealership, which honestly strikes me. I've never heard of a dealership not having somebody capable of repairing the issue. I've honestly, in my 48 years of living on this planet, and I may just be never heard of this. I've never heard of we need to take it to another dealership. So he did that, and you can watch the video. It's a calamity of errors.
It's more
The
common
vehicle
than,
would not
people would
roll.
think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the vehicle would not roll. So to get it off of the flatbed truck they put on, so they basically they take the bed and they make it bounce and they can hop the vehicle off, which is probably causing, honestly, any small damage that was done to the transfer case of this vehicle, honestly, probably caused more damage. Now I'm just speculating on that. I'm not sure,
Yeah.
you
And
know, did it or not.
yeah, I'm happy you mentioned that because I was actually pretty worried. We both have Broncos, and I was thinking, so what is this? I can't take my Bronco off-roading because my Bronco, it kind of sounds like if you off-road with your Bronco, your warranty is canceled. And we'll get into that. Yes and no, but mostly no, depending on some factors, and we'll really cover those.
Mhm.
Once we get the full story from you. And I really do want to stress, everyone who's watching this right now, at the end of this, go over to Dave's channel, watch the interview that he has with the individual that this occurred to. He has him on his show, Dave Z, and they really get into the whole full story. So you're not gonna want to miss that whatsoever. But when you're off-roading, you are warranted because that's an implied use of the vehicle. Ford has implied
Yeah,
to everyone that it is an off-road vehicle. So you are covered for that. But there's conditions on that, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But a big thing that I wanted to know was about the towing. And I did talk to a head manager of service mechanics and really everything that's the back end of the Ford store. And he said that the transfer case is actually hardened steel, and dragging it along just off a towing on and off, even if you did it 4 times, it wouldn't initially break anything.
yeah,
So he said that with it being hardened steel, things were obviously already broken.
right.
But I agree with you, Dave. It could have made things worse because at one point in I really watched that interview. I watched it a couple times. Fantastic information that you're bringing to us, Dave. I really appreciate it because we need to know these things to really know how can we use our Bronco. No one wants to get into a very expensive repair that's going to cost thousands of dollars.
Right.
So yeah, really important intel.
Well,
But
I've got that picture up for you, John, if you can pull that
yeah,
up for us. And
absolutely.
so your audience can see, this is the inside of the transfer case. So after the gentleman got the vehicle to a place that had a specialist, I guess, for this, they opened this case, and this is, I don't know if this is exactly how when they opened it looked, but obviously you can see there's a lot of gears that should not be in that many pieces.
Yeah.
And at some point there was a failure. And if you look, I don't know if my, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I can get my little arrow here. If you look, you can see chunks out of the inner. These are all gear. This is all sealed up in oil and stuff. And you can see where these gears have been rattling around in this, because those are just chunks that hit in there and just kind of dented into that. You can see the spines of this one here is just all missing. A chunk right here is kind of all missing. But obviously, that is not how this should look. And instantly the tech, what kind of aggravated me about this story was the tech pulled that apart. And obviously they're asking the owner of this, hey, you can't, how are you operating this? Because they shouldn't, as you said earlier, John, they just shouldn't, those gears are hardened steel. They shouldn't, if they fail, they should just kind of shatter, like kind of what you see there. But and the guy was like, hey, I was at an
And
off-road
it could have
park.
definitely been made worse once they started pulling it
Yes.
around.
And
Once
even
the tow trucks, once the
yes.
wheels jammed.
Right. And in the video, you can see one wheel doesn't want to turn when we're pulling him off this hill. Initially, it didn't want to turn. And I don't know if one of these gears was bound up in there and then it breaks free and it was okay to roll. But the gentleman would start the vehicle and he would put it in drive. Nothing. It was like it was in neutral, basically. And I'm sure that's a computer failsafe of like, there's something wrong with within the drivetrain. We're not going to allow this vehicle to, it's trying to protect itself is what it's doing. It knows there was a
Yeah.
problem, even though the strange thing, John, it didn't bring up any service engine lights at all. He said he didn't bring any service engine lights till he went back a couple days later, because he was trying to he thought, well, maybe I'll try to put it in the tow haul mode. Maybe the computer's freaking out and that'll sort of do something. And he said when he started it up that time, finally it brought up a service engine light. But I did find it funny that, and I focused this on this video that I did. The first video I did was, you see is the instrument panel. All it ever asked him to do was, like, it says to shift into two, I forget what it was, to shift into too high, put it in neutral, then roll forward or something like, or it said drive forward.
Yeah, it's and I've had a programming issue with my Bronco with its transfer case. After having it in 4 low, I wanted to put it back into 4A. It would not go into 4A.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even go into 2H. And that's the instructions that it gives you to try to get the gears to, you could say, I believe, get the gears to line up again.
Right.
And they wouldn't line up. So I was stuck in 4 low and I actually had to drive home. And I, of course, to avoid overheating, I watched my gauges. I actually stopped once for about 10 minutes to let things cool off. And I drove 30 kilometers an hour, knowing that the limit, if I recall correctly, the screen told me my limit was like 36 or 38 kilometers an hour. So I kept it well below, playing between 25 and 30 kilometers an hour, miles per hour. We'd have issues because I didn't want to overheat those gears, because generally, there's really 3 things that are going to break transfer case. One, if it was incorrectly engineered, and if so, well, then absolutely covered by warranty work. 2, if it overheats. If they overheat, well, then yeah, you can definitely have issues with those gears. And when they do break, it breaks like glass, like we saw in the photo, just like dropping glass on the ground, and it just breaks off into all sorts of chunks. And the other way you can actually have the transfer case break is with incredible torque. So the manager was telling me, or the director was telling me, that he's seen cases where, for example, one specific story, a customer was not really off-road, but pretty much off-road. It was a mansion down by the lake, extreme driveway, left and right on snow. And this thing was snowy and icy, but with the occasional grip on asphalt. And, 10,000 pound trailer. And he just told the garage the Ford store, I really just beat it. Like the tires were spinning the whole time. The only problem is when they would grab asphalt, if you got a heavy truck loaded with a trailer, also loaded with 10,000 pounds, there is so much weight on those tires. Normally, if you're in a Bronco, you shouldn't have problems. If you're spinning and then you pick asphalt, same thing with a Mustang, there's a lot of torque, but the torque isn't beyond the capacities of the
Right.
actual gears. Whereas in this
Right.
case, it was beyond the capacity of the gears. It caused extreme torque while rather quite hot, because we often don't think about it. But if you're, really spinning your tires, your engine RPM is higher. When you're spinning high, the revolutions are high. Those gears are also spinning quite quickly, and they do heat up. So if they either, while they're very hot, if they get a far too much torque given to them, or if they were to cool unbelievably quickly, you could be in a situation where you've got issues with those gears.
Right. And I pulled a picture up here, John. I wanted your audience to see this real quick. Is
Yep.
You can see this is where we were pulling out. You can see this is sand. I know you see a little bit of rock in there too, but this is loose soil.
And
This is
that's
the
okay to
type of
spin.
soil that you would want to use four-wheel low in, which is what he was. And the gentleman even he stresses, because I know the dealership was lecturing the service department. The guy that tore this apart was like, well, you broke this because you're misusing the four-wheel drive system. And the guy was like, no. He goes, I was in 4 high, which you're allowed to be 4 high. What I think you can run 60 miles
Highway.
per hour or so in 4
You
high.
can run in 4 high, you can do 80 miles per hour.
Yeah.
It's highway driving.
Right. But he was like, I would come to an obstacle, and if I felt like I needed to be in 4 low, I'd switch it to 4 low and do the obstacle and go back out. And the guy, I thought it was pretty disrespectful that the person that the tech that took this apart, for one, was lecturing the guy about off-roading. Because the one thing I've noticed with a lot of Ford dealerships right now, they're new to this style of vehicle. Now, yes, you could say, well, they've got the Raptor and they got all this, but they're new to actually this style off-roading. Raptor's a high speed, it's made high speed desert running. I know some people will take it in these conditions, but it's engineered a little bit different than what the Bronco is a direct competitor to the Wrangler. And
Yeah,
those vehicles, you're doing like this style off-roading, you're doing rock crawling, like in
absolutely.
John, I know
In
with you
4
guys, a
low.
lot of snow, a lot of mud.
Yeah.
It's engineered slightly different. And then I posted this on Bronco Nation, and they have some good service techs that in there, and they'll answer questions and stuff. And the guy even said, he said, this struck me funny. He goes, well, that's a base Bronco. It's not intended to be, the gearing of that's not intended to be off-roaded. And I was like, wait, Ford,
No,
as you said earlier, John, Ford
no.
sold this as an off-road vehicle. Their
Yeah.
warranty clearly states, if the intent of how we sold this vehicle, the warranty should cover how we sold it, basically.
Yeah, their
Now,
wording is
Ford also,
implied warranty.
yeah, Ford didn't also say go jump it off a cliff or anything either. I mean, there are limits to, but as you can see in this picture right here, that's like you at the Outer Banks, John.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
that's not hard dirt. That's very loose soil. And the guy told him, he goes, you only use 4-wheel drive in very, very loose soil. I was like, no, I've used four-wheel drive in all types of conditions.
And
But
I'll actually back up what you're saying. I went to the Bronco off rodeo,
mhm,
and they told us, when do you use 4 low? Well, you can use it when you're rock crawling, so that you're, geared to help you, stay under control. But they do really stress that is absolutely for low speeds to
yes,
avoid overheating. And, in this particular instance, let's talking about some solutions. Well, first of all, I do hope that this does get warranted. Um, and there's a few things we need to talk about in regards to that. Obviously, later down the road, if a few more of these instances come up and Ford looks into it, well, it could be decided that it was engineered incorrectly, which I highly doubt. What could
right,
potentially come out is that they find out, like my front transfer case had a programming issue where at low speeds the front was hopping, and it was hopping because even if I was in 2H or 4A, but even in 2 high, it was still partially engaged.
Oh, wow.
And at low speeds in a corner, okay, well, not the end of the world. But let's say his transfer case was, kind of partially stuck in 4 low, you could say, without, the vehicle putting itself in the proper system, 4H, then yes, it would cause overheating. So this could potentially be an overheating issue, which,
Yeah.
Ford, if you overheat the engine, if you overheat the transmission, you're not covered unless it's, if it's, you're not covered if it's due to abuse. And that's the key word in all this. There's two ways really to break the transfer case. It's either through abuse, because you're overheating it, or you're getting that, far too much torque on the wheels because, you're pulling 10,000 pounds. You've got a truck that's overloaded with weight and you're spinning tires. And then all of a sudden you're getting grip many times over, causing an overheating issue. But if the programming caused the overheating issue, well, retrospectively, Ford can go back and say, well, everyone who had this problem is getting refunded. So, we do need to watch the bulletins. We need to stay up to date, that's what Dave and I, All Train Nation and Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, we're here to help people out. So, do subscribe to our channel, follow along, because we're going to continue covering, obviously, we're going to continue covering important stories like this to, really save you thousands. But in Dave's particular case, I think it's really worthwhile that people go through their warranty book, because right in the warranty book, it says no Ford employee can waiver your warranty. So that's right in the introduction, right in the second paragraph. Pretty clear that, in the introduction, it's talking about, no, you can stay right there, Dave, I'm off. In the introduction, they're telling you, take it to your original dealer if they have the trained staff for it. Dealers do have what you could say is like an overall I don't want to call it a spectrum, but they kind of have, it's sort of like a budget. It says you should be between these parameters. So if you're too low, well, then Ford suspects, well, maybe you're saying no too often. And if you're too high, well, then it looks like maybe you're, being abusive, not on the customer's end, but on Ford's end, because Ford doesn't want to cover people that abuse their vehicle and shouldn't be. So if you think of someone that, they're doing if you're burning your tires, for example, from brand new tires, and you're burning them straight off, so you're spinning those tires for 5 minutes and you're overheating your transmission, well, they don't want to pay for abuse. And that's why right in the warranty guide, it says you're not covered if you're using your vehicle under race conditions. However, thank you for highlighting that. No person, including Ford employees or dealers, may modify or waive any part of these warranties. So you need to really be ready to, stand your point, stand your ground and say, no, my use was normal use. And I worried because I went to the manager, the director, and I was like, so I can't off-road my Bronco? And he's like, no, the Bronco, it's implied, there's an implied warranty with that, because Ford has implied quite clearly and obviously to everyone that this isn't a vehicle you can off-road with. You just can't abuse it. So for example, you can't put it in.
They sold it in that video, John. John, that video that they
launched. That's right.
They sure sold it.
Yeah, and I certainly use that as a background many times, that B-roll. They definitely sold it as an off-road vehicle. It's implied. There's an implied warranty on off-roading. It just doesn't cover abuse. So you can't put it in 4-low. And, I did this when I was in my Badlands, not my Outer Banks, but my Badlands was in Outer Banks, and I was in the sand. And I knew it's my responsibility to keep an eye on my engine, transmission, temperatures. And I was in 4-low on the beach, because I believe there is even a sign saying air down and put your vehicle in 4-low if you've got it. The only problem is I was going at one point pretty close to the actual complete limit of the 4-low, and you can only go there for a moment. You can't drive, for 45 minutes at 35 or 36 miles per hour. So I actually stopped, let my vehicle cool down for 10 minutes, took some photos. and then went back into four automatic, or for those that don't have 4 automatic, you can put it in 4 high. Yeah, there's that original video.
Yeah, I wanted to show this a little bit because look, I mean, they're not being easy on that vehicle. This is what they sold. This thing is very capable. It can go, you know, and we're not in the thing that strikes me out. We're not in any of these conditions. I'm in the most sandy conditions possible, and the vehicle failed.
Yeah.
So I wanted your audience to kind of remember those videos on how they sold this vehicle.
Yeah, and talk with your dealer, talk to them about that. And of course, if you're at your own dealer that sold you your vehicle, well, you know, they've got parameters to respect. And, you know, there's penalties to being way under. There's penalties. You know, it's not seen. There's issues if you're saying no to everyone. And there's definitely issues if you're saying yes to all warranty work, because some people truly shouldn't be warranted because they are really misusing their vehicle. But it's a judgment call. And that's why in your warranty guide, there's actually a section that says, you know, if you're having issues with warranty coverage, call one of these 2 numbers. One is Ford and the other is the Better Bureau. The
Better Business Bureau, maybe?
Better Business Bureau. It's not the same here in Canada, so that did not roll off my tongue whatsoever.
No, in Canada it'd be a much
should,
friendlier name.
Yeah, I absolutely. Fair. So anyways, that is what you need to do. You need to be ready to contact Ford at the number they've given you. And then if you really didn't get any progress there, talk to the Better, well, I'll let you say the Better Business Bureau.
Bureau here in the United States, yes.
Look at that. You're helping me become more American every day, and I appreciate you for
If we could just get your poodles to be more American. Come on.
Yeah, they're French poodles, but oddly, if I recall, they're called French poodles, but they're originally bred and created in Germany, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
yeah, I'm pretty sure about this. I heard it from Marie. So for someone who says is always talking about sources and back everything up with data and facts, this is out of my ordinary to quote Marie on it. So anyways, check your warranty book. You're not covered for abuse. So basically how the technicians at that dealer are seeing things is, one, this isn't our client, and it's going to push us more towards, once you're out of that parameter range and you're saying yes too often, it's going to cost, there's going to be penalties. There's going to be a cost to your dealership. So buy from a dealer that can properly work on your vehicle. That's, I think, a big one. And then be ready to really explain and show them that you know what you're talking about. Say, no, in 4 low, I never once went over, in my case, 30 kilometers an hour.
Mm-hmm.
With my current Bronco, I drove back and I was always sitting between 25 and 30. I was very careful. I saw the system telling me what the max number is, and I was prepped and ready if anything went wrong to be able to say, I never heated. I watched all my gauges and I never overheated. Because when you're talking about hardened steel, naturally, the service department, knowing they know their transfer cases, they know it's hardened steel. So in their mind, unless there's an engineering or programming defect, the only way it's going to break is through abuse. It's either overheating or some wild several over torque issues that occur.
Right.
Now, the problem is you should also be ready to tell them that not just the day the piece broke, but that in the past you haven't done these things either, because a lot of people assume that, you can you can race your vehicle on Sunday, and then on Monday, if it breaks, well, it's not related whatsoever. But no, things actually can, you can, let's say you race your vehicle on Sunday. So you've raced your vehicle on Sunday and you figure, hey, it didn't break while racing. I'm A-okay. If it breaks later, I'm totally covered. And that's where you're totally wrong. If there's evidence out there, you're making videos, you're posting them on your Facebook, or even worse, your Facebook main page is you at the drag strip, you're canceled. It's game over. And actually, warranty guide, Ford even specified, even if the implied use of your Ford vehicle is to be a race vehicle, it's not covered for race application. So real important for one with the Ford performance products, any SE products, you're not covered for racing. Now let's just sum this all up. The Bronco implied use is for off-roading. It was made very clear to me by the director that you can off-road your Bronco. And I told him, I said, myself and a lot of other people will not be buying Broncos again in the future if we can't do a little bit of off-roading with them. So yes, you can do off-roading with them, but go with what's called abnormal use, or abuse is another word for it. Warranty calls it abnormal use. So what abnormal use? It's pretty clear. Anything overheating isn't meant to function if it melts. And in the case of the transfer case, if it gets really, really hot, well, then the hardened steel, it could, if it gets sudden, if it cools off really quickly, or if it gets an impact, or of course, just crazy torque to it when it's really, really hot, it's going to shatter like glass. So really important that you know that, you keep that in mind, and you treat your Bronco accordingly. Now, Dave, you were talking about how you're on loose sand. That is probably the safest surface environment you can be driving in, that you can be doing off-roading in. And as long as you keep your speeds very low, you can absolutely be in for low. Now, I'm wondering if long-term we're going to find out that these transfer cases, due to programming, got fixed by being reprogrammed. Was the front transfer case was still partially locked.
Well,
sorry,
let me
cut
ask
out
you,
right there.
John,
the front transfer case was still partially locked. It could have overheated.
Well, let me ask you this, because I've off-roaded for 25 plus years, man. I'm used to the old manual style transfer cases where you had a lever, you would put it in, and it was either in or it wasn't in four-wheel high or low. I'm assuming that there's a black box per se of where these things store what the truck was doing at all times, that they're able to plug in, and they would know right away to call BS either on the person that maybe he did abuse it, maybe he didn't, but they can plug in and they know exactly the speed that the vehicle was probably traveling, the RPMs that engine was doing. So they know, they have to know in that, where I showed you that picture, there's no way the guy was not about to jump that. You know, like he was not at some speed. So I would think that the tech would see, if he's an investigator, investigate. And like you were saying, maybe it was partially engaged. I don't know, as a programming issue.
And the dealer needs to share that, because like we shared earlier with the photo, no Ford employee can waiver your warranty. However, there is a judgment call to be made under what is abuse and what is not abuse. And if they want to say it's abuse, they've got to show something for it. So I agree with you completely. I don't think, how do you incorrectly design a transfer case when you've been building trucks forever? I really don't suspect this is poorly designed. This could potentially, this is either one of two categories. This either went wrong because the programming went wrong and the vehicle didn't go in limp mode quick enough. It overheated, and that's why it broke. In which case, later down the road, when we find out, we'll find out that people who are affected, like Dave, will be covered retroactively. Or did it just overheat because was there an issue? Who knows? We don't know the whole story. The black box hopefully will tell it, but at some other point, could be a month ago, were we driving in 4 low? Were we going, 40 miles per hour? Did things get hot and did, a little piece of a gear kind of break off and start rattling along? And then it required going back in 4 low another time with that small broken piece to go get jammed somewhere, create all sorts of torque, and then have everything blow up, which we can see, did it get blown up when it was getting pulled? Obviously, what was broken was already broken. There was already an issue at hand before it got towed. But if there was, broken pieces going up against, or even one broken piece jammed in between 2 gears, well, then forcing it forward, it was already broken, but that could cause that overall explosion look that we saw in the transfer case. So I think the Ford techs need to show, where
Yeah.
did this thing get driven not correctly?
Right. And I think part of the problem, I think, for Dave Z is if you look at the vehicle, it's muddy looking, it's dirty because he was out at an off-road park having fun. So I think because I think Ford has an issue with their techs don't know four-wheel drive. Well, they know four-wheel drive, but they don't know this, like I said earlier, like Wranglers. Jeep knows what their Wranglers go through. And I think Ford techs, they're a little new to this style vehicle. And we're only a year and a half into this being really out to the public. So
Absolutely.
the techs have to be kind of maybe educated a little bit. And I know Ford has been sending techs to these off-road training.
Yeah. And I can tell you, there's actually a lot of money that goes into educating techs. The problem is, and I agree with you, but what I would add is that history. You look at the Wrangler has history. They know what their weak points are. So when you know you've built something and there's, an issue within certain years, they'll go, oh yeah, that broke because of, X, you're covered. And they don't ask very many questions because they know that's what caused it. Now, when you have a new vehicle, generally you've got to work from one of two assumptions. You can either go into a situation thinking we made this completely wrong, everything's wrong with it. If anyone breaks, it's clearly our fault. We made, a horrible piece of junk. Obviously, that's not the case these days. A lot of hundreds of millions of dollars go into making these vehicles. They're, our engineers are highly educated. They're making really high quality vehicles. Does that mean no mistakes will ever get made? No, but it does mean that, with time, we need time to know what really happened here. If one transfer case breaks, let's take the engine valve issue on the Bronco. The initial reaction on the first engine that popped must have been, we've sold a couple 100,000 2.7 liters. It's highly reliable. It's unbelievably well engineered. There are any defects. It was engineered top grade, top shelf. It's like that whiskey you drink, my friend. And however, they then, more come out and they start asking questions. It's like, oh, okay, well, maybe something is going on. Then they dive into it, they look into it, and they go, okay, now that we've investigated, because there's, investments cost money. And when you're 1 in 200,000, you can assume abuse.
Yeah.
But when you start getting a bunch of them, it's like, okay, let's investigate some of these valves. Okay, there was a batch of poorly made valves. Let's go back. Let's cover everyone. Everyone's paid for. This could happen with this particular transfer case issue, or maybe the black box, like you said, the black box could tell one of two stories. It was abuse or there was no abuse and it should be covered.
Well, and either way, I know David said they quoted him $4,000 to repair just that transfer case to basically get him a new one. And then they also told him, hey, we don't know when we can get one. And so that's, obviously we're coming out of pandemic time and it's still a little bit crazy, but we all don't have 5 different vehicles sitting in our garage just waiting for one to break so you can just jump into the next one. So, like every hardworking person in North America here, we need our vehicle to get back and forth to work, to the grocery stores or wherever. So I feel for the gentleman, because had I covered this story and not seen him how he was driving, I would be like, probably abused it. I probably would have been the same thing at the tech. I would have saw the dirty vehicle and thought he was just out there probably being rambunctious and just went out there and tore it up. But seeing firsthand how the person was driving, and I went to this not even trying to cut. This was not the story I went up there to cover. By the way, I was going to cover something completely different, and this story kind of not fell in my lap, but like it's a gold mine by any means. But to see, like I said, this is the gentleman's transportation, and if that foremost, that's what these vehicles are. Yes, they're capable of off-roading, but they are transportation to get you from point A to point B. And now he's without, and he's battling with Ford now, and he's making car payments on this vehicle, and it's just sitting there not being able to either enjoy it or just use it at all. So I do feel for this person in this situation, and I hope stories like this bring, with the way our channels are covering this, I hope it sheds some light. I hope it doesn't. I don't want this to be a negative against the vehicle, because this is the first one I've heard of breaking a transfer case. Though, like, you've had some programming issues. I know somebody else has had some programming issues, but I just hope that people will go, look, things break. The Ford's going to fix it. Either way, they're going to fix it. And we move on from it. And all parties, because I know in my comments, I've seen some people, John, I've seen some people in my comments being like, well, you know, it's a POS Ford, blah, blah, blah. Like, look, man, trust me, Jeep's quality, their motor quality is not 100%. So those guys have no room to talk.
And a Jeep, and a Jeep Wrangler's transmission or a Jeep Gladiator's transmission, they never have any transmission issues whatsoever. No, the difference is Jeep knows they have a weak transmission, and if it breaks at 10,000 miles, they're not going to fight you on it. They're going to be like, they're going to be kind of, you know, like anyone would be. You will get that fixed as soon as possible. Really sorry about it. You're our third this month at this dealer. So sorry. And they know what to expect. Now, of course, if you're the first transfer case to break, the general assumption is, well, you're the only one. We've engineered it correctly. So we'll see what happens with this. My heart does go out to him because, that's his transportation. He does need to fight it. You know, he needs to call in your warranty guide, the numbers right there, the two numbers. He needs to call Ford, and if that doesn't work, Better Business Bureau. And remember, you know, for people that this hasn't happened to you yet, the dealer you buy at, make sure that they're qualified in fixing your vehicle, because they're going to be the most motivated to take care of you. Of course, when you're doing warranty work, it doesn't cost. It's actually beneficial to the dealer because it's keeping their mechanics busy. They're getting paid by Ford to work on your vehicle. It's not as if it's costing the dealer anything, rather quite the opposite. It's helping them be profitable. However, they do need to stay within certain parameters. They can't be saying no to everyone, and they certainly can't be saying yes to everyone, because some people do really mistreat their vehicles, and Ford doesn't want to, like any manufacturer, Ford doesn't want to be paying for things that are absolutely the customer's fault. So just keep in mind how you use your vehicle, whether it's a Bronco, whether it's a Maverick, a current Ford Ranger, or those Ford Rangers Dave and I definitely want to get our hands on, the new model. Keep in mind what's going on. Look at your gauges. If you're off-road, watch them. Make sure you don't overheat, and don't ever believe a dealer that tells you that's not covered before they even open up your vehicle. Because one thing that this director made very clear to me, he said, if this individual was told he wasn't going to be covered before they opened it up, just because there's mud underneath the vehicle, that's completely wrong. They can't do that. You need reasoning to not do the warranty work. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, no Ford employee can waiver your warranty. So the only way you're not getting covered, even if they are out of the parameters and they've said yes way too much, and it's the end of the year and they don't have any budget left, or any, you could say claim left on a model, they're still responsible for taking care of your vehicle. And they need to be able to explain why you fall underneath that abuse category. And mud underneath a vehicle, or a muddy vehicle on a vehicle that's intended to get muddy, which the Bronco is, which a Maverick Tremor, a Ford Maverick Tremor, a Ford Bronco, those things, they've shown it us, those vehicles going off-road, you are covered.
Even Bronco Sport.
Warranty isn't
Bronco Sport. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I wouldn't have thought about the Bronco Sport, and that's not a word that comes out of my mouth very often. But my parents have one, and no, we don't. But going up their driveway in the winter truly is off-road. It's snow, it's ice. Sometimes they're going through 4 or 5 inches of snow. They bought the Badlands. In no case would my local dealership ever look underneath the vehicle, and underneath of the vehicle does have mud on it. That's just part of their natural private driveway. These things are made for it. If, implied warranty is if you're using the vehicle how Ford implied you could use it. A little more difficult under business use if you're going beyond what the vehicle was intended. So for towing, know your tow limits. For payload, know your payload limits, because if you overheat, the motor towing more than it's allowed to do so, you're not going to be covered. So make sure your vehicle doesn't overheat. We'll cut it short on that. Dave, really appreciate it. Always enjoy working with you. We both come from similar and different backgrounds, or I guess similar backgrounds, but we end up with different conclusions, different. So it's always fun chatting with you. Thank you. Thank you for collaborating with me on this one.
I appreciate you having me on your show, man.
Absolutely. So check out Dave's show. I hope you're all already subscribed to his show. And if you're not subscribed to Johnny's Car Care and Reviews, well, do that, because we're both covering all the must-know information, the don't be fooled information. We want you well taken care of. So until next time, I'll do my out first. Wish you all more cars and more power. Hope you get to put the pedal to the metal. And Dave,
whether it be 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, it doesn't matter what you drive, Johnny.
Right on. As long as it's a Ford. No, just kidding.